mich nicht!
He wants mercy.
You do not deserve mercy!
What mercy did you show to our people? Die.
Wait, wait! He may help.
Help us! He can die for us! Mudak!
Chernoff! What is going on?
These men are trying to surrender!
Look around you, Chernoff. Do you think these men will be denied their revenge?
Stuff like this very much did happen, where there was massive atrocities on the Eastern Front where prisoners were constantly executed. So the Germans would murder Soviet prisoners of war, and the Soviets would murder German prisoners of war. And the Soviets killing German prisoners of war actually increased Soviet casualties. And the reason for that is because when the Germans know that they're either going to get sent to a gulag or they're going to get, executed when they surrender, that they would rather fight the death at that point than surrender. So literally, is by the Soviets killing German prisoners of war, is this actually caused more Germans to fight, and because of that, more Soviet soldiers ended up dying. So it's stupid. It's a war crime. It's also stupid to execute prisoners of war or war. It's stupid because it's going to get more of your soldiers killed, because if the enemy know that you're not going to take prisoners, they're going to keep fighting, and then more of your soldiers are going to die. If the enemy knows that you're going to be treated humanely and you're going to be treated fairly if you surrender, and you're probably going to survive, they're more likely to surrender. That's why there was mass surrenders to the Western Front to the Americans. That's why so many Germans were surrendering to the Americans, because they knew that they had a much higher chance of surrendering to the Americans than much higher chance of surrendering to the Americans than they did to the Soviets. So around this time in like 1945, when Germany was collapsing, what happened was there was thousands of Germans that were deserting. And they were basically, what they were doing is they were going to the western side of Germany just so they could surrender to the Americans, because they knew the war was already lost, and they were just going to the American line, surrendering, hoping that they can, they can survive, at least surrendering to the Americans. So that basically shows you the Germans rather surrender to the Americans because they know the Americans are probably not going to murder them when they surrender. And as for, I know some people are going to say in the comments, but Professional, didn't US soldiers execute German soldiers also? Yes, in instances it did happen also, but it wasn't widespread like with the Red Army. The Red Army, there was much more widespread killing of prisoners of war than there was with the US Army. And the US Army, the soldiers that the US Army typically executed were SS. So they would check the collar, and if they saw the SS, they typically would execute them. So SS soldiers were typically executed, and the reason for that was because SS soldiers were the most fanatical to Hitler. They were the most loyal to Hitler. They were Hitler's, most elite personal soldiers were the SS. And so that's why the SS were oftentimes executed. One unit that actually got executed a lot by the Americans was German tank troops, because German tankers, they actually wore black. They wore all black, and a lot of American soldiers confused that for the SS. So when tankers ended up surrendering after the tank got knocked out, Americans would think they were SS and execute them. Now, there was SS tank units, but pretty much every single tanker had a black uniform, and because of that, Americans falsely thought that they were SS and would execute them.